My name is Mike. This is a story of the most frightening thing that has ever happened to me. It was Halloween night 2 years ago. I was 17 at the time. Halloween is my favorite holiday. The mixture of gorgeous autumn leaves and a cool breeze in the air starting in late September really gets me in the mood for the Halloween season. Horror movies and yard decorations are another favorite of mine to celebrate this time of year. Anyway, my parents decided to go to a friend's Halloween party this year, and that meant I would be taking my younger sister out for trick-or-treating. This was fine by me. She loves Halloween just as much as I do, and it's always fun to see other kids and their parents out celebrating and getting some good scares. My sister dressed up as Moana. I originally wasn't going to dress up, but she seemed disappointed that I wasn't going to, so I threw together a last-minute costume. I put on a jumpsuit and got a patch for it that says Gizmonics, since I was going as Joel from Mystery Science Theater 3000. Easy enough. As the afternoon went by, the sun started setting and the streetlights began coming on. This was the universal sign for trick-or-treating time. We said goodbye to our parents, who were about to leave for their party as well, and headed out the door. We have a usual path that we take when we go trick-or-treating. We first turn left outside of our house and hit all the houses as we go up the hill, about 5 blocks. Then we cross the street and go back down the opposite way, which has 4 cul-de-sacs we can hit on the way back to our house. We had just finished the first row of houses on the left, and crossed the street to start going to the first cul-de-sac. We arrived at the first house, got our candy, and went to the next house. My family knows the family that lives there. Well, used to live there. They moved out a few months ago, and I had completely forgotten that fact when we knocked on the door, and a man we didn't recognize answered. He looked to be about 30 years old, short and skinny, and had disheveled hair. He didn't open it all the way though, he just cracked it open and peered out from behind the door, as if he wasn't expecting visitors and didn't know people were out trick-or-treating for Halloween. My little sister said, "Trick or treat," but he just stared at her, and would occasionally glance up at me. He gave me the creeps. After a few uncomfortable seconds, he said, "Give me 1 second," and closed the door. My sister and I stood there confused and looked at each other. About a minute passed, and just as I was about to tell my sister we should move on, the door opened back up, this time fully. The inside of the man's house was immaculate. The furniture was spaced out just so, and the wooden floors were gleaming. It was almost impressive. He said he had to go find his candy, and sorry it took so long. Just then, we heard muffled screams coming from somewhere within the house. He told us he had put on a Halloween sound effects CD to get more in the spirit. Normally those sound effects CDs have thunder or maniacal laughter or something, but this was just screaming. He then told us that he still needed to find the candy because he didn't have any luck the first time. The man invited us into the house to wait while he searched for the candy, and he got this strange, overly excited grin on his face after saying that and looked down at my sister. Now, my sister is too young to understand when a situation needs to be avoided, but I sure as hell know when it's time to leave. I tell the man we have to go, but thanks anyway, and I grab my sister's hand and turn around, quickly walking down the path, through his yard, and back onto the sidewalk. When we get back onto our route, I turn my head to look back at the house with the creepy guy, and he is still standing there in his doorway. But that grin was gone. It was replaced with a look of pure hatred and anger, staring directly into my soul. After another 30 minutes or so of trick-or-treating, we finally finished our route and headed home. My sister and I stayed up late, sorting the candy we had gotten, and I tried keeping my mind off of that man for the time being. When my parents got home from the party, I pulled them aside and told them what happened, trying to convey how creepy the situation was to them. After a little talking, they decided to make a call to the police, telling them exactly what I had said had happened. The police said they would check it out. The next morning, while getting ready for school, we get a knock on our door and I answered it. It was a detective and a patrolman. They asked if I was Mike and if my parents were home. I told them my mother was and grabbed her so she could talk to the police. The 2 officers talked to my mom in private for about 15 minutes and then said goodbye, leaving our house. I asked my mother what that was all about, and she said that last night they went to that man's house to investigate what was going on. using a noise complaint as an excuse. When the man answered, they talked for a minute, but then the officers heard the screaming that we were talking about, coming from within the house. They asked the man what the screaming was, and he tried to tell them it was Halloween sound effects, just as he did with us, but the police knew better. They told the man to show them where the recording was coming from, and he gave some bad excuse as to why he couldn't do that. The detective then told the patrolman to stay with the man and went into the man's house, looking for the source of the screams. About a minute later, the detective came back out to the living room and told the officer to arrest the man, and immediately radioed for backup and an ambulance. It turns out, the man living in the house was holding a woman captive in a spare bedroom at the back of the house. She was tied up and had many injuries all over her body. There were also pictures of other women in similar situations lining the wall of the room. The detective didn't tell my mother much else after that, only that they were grateful we called when we did because this man was most likely a serial killer and wouldn't have been stopped anytime soon. I'll leave you with a warning about trick-or-treating. Always trust your instincts, and never go into anyone's home. You could end up as a picture on their wall.